Hello and welcome to the SAVE podcast, a space where children and youth will talk to experts about all things relating children, from child rights to climate crisis to what adults could do to help ensure a better future for the children. An in-house production of Save the Children Nepal country office. Today, I'm Asmi, your host for the first episode. In this episode, we are joined by Hassan Noor Saadi, Asia Regional Director of Save the Children. He has been working in the area of humanitarian and development for the past 23 years, specifically in regions such as South Asia, Middle East, and East Africa. We are also here joined by the Sati Air Bear, our mascot for the Generation Hope and Air Pollution campaign. Hassan has been traveling around Nepal for the past week and has been engaging with local communities and areas around Nepal to see and to view the direct impacts that Save the Children Nepal has put in the general consensus of Nepal. We are delighted to have you here, so could you please begin with a short introduction?
Well, you have introduced me quite well. I'm Hassan, Regional Director for Save the Children in Asia. It's been almost 6 years I'm into this role, but with Save the Children, it's almost 18 years I have worked with.
That's a long time, to be honest.
Yes, it is.
So, in this episode, we've collected various questions from all people all around Nepal. And could you please give a brief about what places you've been to in Nepal and what you've been up to the past week?
Okay, so we landed in Kathmandu. And then we left for Nepalganj. In Nepalganj, we have some programs. So we visited those programs. From there, we went to Circuit and we stayed there. And there are a number of our programs that we are implementing in Circuit. So I visited those programs. And then yesterday, we came back. And then today, we had been having meetings with our colleagues in Nepal country office.
That's like a tight packed schedule, to be honest,
Yes,
from when you've
it
arrived.
is.
So how was Nepal been to you? What was your experience in this
It
past
has
week?
been very hospitable, great, wonderful. Most importantly, I think I was thrilled to see the children who are part of various activities. And I was enthralled to see their confidence, their passion, their engagement, their awareness. I was very, very impressed. So it has been one of my best field visits.
A good impression for
Yes,
sure.
absolutely. Very
And you've
good
probably
impression.
been in the hottest areas or regions of Nepal, so you experienced some heat too.
Well, I live in Singapore, which is quite hot and humid. So I think it has been quite okay for me.
Okay. So in this episode, we collected questions from children all around Nepal and we asked them about questions that they would like to ask you. As all of us were excited to have you here, and we've collected a few questions. So can you please start from the questions then?
Yes, you can ask me any question you want to.
Of course. Then, firstly, as we're talking about Save the Children, it's mainly focused on children and their wellness and their well-being and securing a better future for them, child rights. That's what Save the Children is about. Its main focus is about improving the quality of life of children. And speaking about children have a very, I think, idealistic view of the world. Like when I was 10, an ideal world would be somewhere where I could have all the chocolates and no cavities in my teeth so that I didn't have to go to the dentist. And those were dreams that a 10-year-old me or a child me, I'm still a child, but still good, that I had when I was younger than I am right now. So what were your dreams when you were a child? What was an ideal world for you like? What did you think you will make? What kind of changes or what kind of world you wanted to live in when you were 10?
So that's a very interesting question. I would need to take myself some 36 years back and reflect what kind of a world I wanted. So I would say that from very early on, when I was young, 8, 9, I used to write essays and poetry and short stories and used to read quite a lot. So for me, I wanted a world which was equal for everyone. Particularly at that point of time, there's so many complexities which, as children, we try to see them in a very simplest way. So I think what I would say that I did not like poverty. It used to hurt to see people who had nothing or who were deprived. So yes, and so that's why very early on I decided that I am going to be in a position or be in a sector where I can do something for other people.
That seems like a cool and idealistic view, and what every one of us want to be as like a human. We want to help contribute to the society, make it more inclusive, make it more equitable. That's like a really interesting answer and something that I think all of us will relate to as well. If you were like a kid today, like being a kid is a time of complete bliss and honor when you're like involved in all things and everything looks happy and happening. So like in when you were a child, that's a common experience that we all face. So like if you are a kid today, if you were to be a kid today, what would be something that you would be most excited about in today's world?
So what were the things that we did not have when I was a child? I think I would be very happy with having Netflix, YouTube,
Yes.
Google, so many avenues of information. When I see a 10-year-old now and when I compare that how we were, I think now the kids are so far ahead in terms of their knowledge and understanding and their awareness of issues. So yes, I definitely would have liked that.
I think it's like a cycle. Like when we grow up like fast, like if I grow up like in like the next 30 years, I'll also be telling the same things about kids my age at that time, like 16-year-olds. When I'll be 30, I'll be like, I wish I had a life the 16-year-old has right now. I think it's an ongoing cycle for us. So when we're children, school is an integral part of our life. School and family is basically what our lives surround us. Like what is our life surrounded around? How our school is, how our family is. Those are like the foundational places where we build up ourselves and make ourselves as people. So how was your school experience? Was it like the quintessential like South Asian school experience, like facing many harsh realities? Like what did you face as a child when going to school?
So, I mean, I was very interested in education and I always had done really good, but I was not that interested in school as such. So as a child, I remember that I used to skip school quite a lot, but then, would study at home. And the reason is that schools in those days perhaps did not offer as much facilities as we could have in this time, and corporal punishment was very common. So school needs to be a place which children should aspire to be going, should get excited getting up about that, oh, I have to go to school. So perhaps I didn't have such a great school, maybe.
That may be like the general opinion of many people in today's world as well. Like school is a place where like perhaps in many instances I've heard many cases where teachers lash out on children or beat them when they're not able to do their work on time, etc., etc. Do you think that it was something good? I'm sure we do not think it's good, but do you think it is necessary, or what are your opinions about the punishments that can be provided or that we've heard about that teachers give in schools?
I think that's absolutely harmful for children. So children learn best when they are given respect, when they have been given importance, and their issues are understood just as issues of adults are understood. So once you provide them that confidence that they are important and they have very good understanding, and then you engage with them positively, constructively, that is where you can get the best potential out of a child. So I am extremely against any kind of punishments or violence against children.
Yes, I totally relate to it. Like when I look back, the things that I used to be excited about, or when I was willing to do things in school, was when we were treated like adults. Like as children, we want to be treated like adults, and that's like we want to be treated with equal respect and importance. So I can totally relate to how you
Yeah.
said that and how it impacted me as well. Um, so, growing other questions that we have is, what do you think has changed in time, like as time has gone on, from like a kid's life when you were a kid to a kid's life in today's time?
A lot has changed, and there are so many positive developments that have taken place in last 35 years. So if I mean, I would not know the exact data, but generally speaking, 35 years back, in majority of the developing countries, the chances of a child surviving were low. Child mortality rates were very high. Likewise, the school enrollment rates were quite low. The different avenues for knowledge and information, they were not there. Because of that, uh, children or even adults, families didn't know what the broader world was, what was going on. Now, so much progress has been made, particularly in terms of reducing child mortality, in terms of encouragement for school, in terms of greater access to various knowledge sources. So a lot has changed, and there has been greater awareness about children's rights, and there's so much work being done in terms of how best to take care of children. However, at the same time, I see that these all possibilities or all progress is not equitable. We have a lot of places where you would find that children are treated in best possible manner, but then a large part of the world still has some very harsh treatment of children. So a lot of work needs to be done still.
I focused on climate change or like climate crisis previously, to how it has been such a burning issue. It's not an issue of today, but it has been an issue from like trying to being like we're trying to make it known, or we're trying to make it into highlight since the 1980s, but sadly actions have been taken, but I don't even know if they're probably being taken. Like they're being taken, but in like a slow rate, you could say, where we can't see those actions being impactful. So, what do you think as an adult? What are your responsibilities to our childrens of today's world, or what are your opinions, or what are the things you think that adults could do to help mitigate the climate crisis?
So, in terms of climate crisis, as adults, I think we are failing our children, and it is responsibility of one generation to leave a better world for the coming generation, and then coming generation has a responsibility to leave even a better world for the next one. And but unfortunately, at the rate at which climate is changing and deteriorating, it is alarming. So last year we did a study that showed that today's children are most likely to witness more climate related disasters, three times more climate related disasters than the older generation, which simply means that the rate of change of climate is massive. So they need to put a much stronger force to push the world leaders to take strong action, because I still believe that if the right actions are taken now, then we can mitigate some of the impact that climate change would have on human life. And but I mean, so far the progress has been extremely slow, and again, the economic interests and the way the world operates, there isn't a very strong willingness to change some of those things. And Even this morning, I was reading that Hong Kong has received its highest ever rainfall. So did southern China. If you look at the amount at which cyclones and typhoons are hitting different parts of the world, it's not something that we are very familiar with. So a lot of people do not consider that climate change is real. I just get amazed that how could someone be so naive and ignore the scientific data and facts and figures behind and ignore everything. So again, I think children are, and it's amazing the way children are taking up their issues and trying to make an impact. That effort needs to be fully supported by adults, by organizations, by the industry, by the government, and there needs to be a much stronger focus on strong action. So G20 is taking place, I think, tomorrow and day after tomorrow. I really hope that there is strong recognition that we need to take climate crisis very seriously.
Speaking about how you said like people are not addressing climate change, they're not addressing it as a reality themselves. I feel like, do you feel, or like I'm just asking for your opinion as well, like in developing countries like Nepal, people are still yet to recognize that climate change is a thing. When I have conversations with people in and around my family or in and around my society, you hear frequent discussions about how the rainfall has not been in the proper manner that it should be, how this year's harvest or this year's crops will not yield properly, or how I come from a hilly region of Nepal, and whenever I go there and whenever I visit there, we hear frequent conversations with my grandparents about how a few like 15 to 20 years back there used to be no mosquitoes in the hilly region, and nowadays mosquitoes are all around. That means that they're facing climate change, but they're still yet to recognize it. How do you think we can make them help them recognize that climate change is the reason why they've been seeing all these abnormalities?
So, one of the things which, having visited a lot of countries, and particularly after a disaster has struck, I see that there is some level of fatalism about climate change, that this is something that is happening and would continue to happen, and what is it we can do? It's God given, and that's how things are. So I think what really is needed is strong education, that so much is in our hands, and we need to kind of make them understand the data, that how carbon and carbon dioxide is really adding to global warming, and how that global warming is in fact changing our climate. So again, I mean, if we are able to reduce carbon levels in our atmosphere, we would be able to reverse some of the harms that already had been done. So again, I think there is much stronger need for simplifying the messages. One of the things is that whenever you are reading a report on climate change, sometimes it can get very technical and very scientific. So we need to make it understandable for a lay person, and we need to ensure that they can understand that our actions have consequences, and individual action can have consequences. But again, if we take an affirmative action, if we do something about it, there would be benefits as well, and that's how it becomes individual as well as collective responsibility. So it's just like, we have to educate masses on so many things. Climate is another idea, but again, there are people who do not believe in climate change, and who create a false and alternative narrative. I think that is where we need to fight it off very strongly, and we need to really ensure that those theories at least are debunked.
I feel like we need to go to the general consensus and make it like as simple as it can be for the
Yes,
general people.
yes,
Like how sanitation was made simpler and reached into rural areas of
yeah.
various countries. So as I mentioned in like the beginning, we're joined by the Sathi Air Bear here too. He's like a mascot for our Generation Hope campaign, and he is an example about how a white bear, when surrounding or when traveling around places with high air pollution, can easily get polluted. It's like a symbol of how air pollution is impacting the daily lives of children and all people all around. So, what do you think are actions that we could take, or perhaps things we could do to help mitigate air pollution? Do you think that individual effort only is enough? Because for the most part, individuals may try their best to help mitigate their carbon emissions or etc., the industry policies are yet to change, and until and unless those change, I don't think there's much hope. So what do you think? Is there hope for it?
So, I mean, there is always hope because we never reach that point from where we cannot rise. I'll give you an example that last week I was in China and I went to Beijing. And some years back, Beijing was perhaps one of the most polluted city in the world. And the air pollution was such a massive problem. At that time, the government and the people, they decided that this is an issue that we are going to address. So there was a policy framework, there were strict actions that were taken, people were educated, their behaviors changed, their use of certain things that would lead to pollution, they stopped those behaviors. And at the same time, there was a policy environment that would help reduce the pollution. And it's just amazing to see within such short period of time how they have changed the air quality. And so that is possible anywhere. All we need to do is to understand what is causing, what are the main contributors of this pollution. So if it is industrial waste, or if it is not so efficient vehicles, if people are burning wrong kind of fuels in their homes, and then having a proper policy and making sure that all people understand and government follows that policy, that is important, and that can be controlled.
So obviously the quote like where there's a will, there's a way is of very much importance regarding issues relating climate change. Like we can agree on that probably.
Absolutely. Whenever there is a will, there is a way. And again, it's sometimes that, if you have to move a small stone, you can do that yourself. If it's a slightly bigger stone that you could not do, couple of people, they can do it. If it's a very big stone, then it would take a lot more people to move that stone. Likewise, different problems have different magnitude, and in order to create an impact or an effect, a different level of effort is required. Climate change is a global crisis. It is perhaps one of the biggest crises of this century. And in order to address that, a lot more hands are needed. And that is where individual actions are important. And as I said, that collective actions are important. So we want our policymakers, politicians, our industries, our people, children, everyone to make an effort, and we certainly can move this problem as well.
Okay, so throughout this whole duration, we've learned how passionate you are about children and their rights and the climate crisis as well. So regarding this, a question that I had is why and how Save the Children is helping address these problems. Why do you enjoy working with Save the Children? Do you think there has been prominent impact while you've been working with Save the Children?
Of course. And so that is the reason that I still am continuing to work with Save the Children, because wherever I go and I look at the programs that we are doing, it just energizes me. It gives me hope. So as I said, that first 3 days during my visit, we were in Nepalganj and in Surkhet, and we saw different programs, and it was just amazing to see that what a big impact those programs are creating. So we saw a person who was deaf, and his family was very worried that what would happen, and then that person was enrolled into one of our vocational training program and was supported to set up a business. And just because of that effort and that engagement, that person has his own small enterprise, earning good money, and has been able to send his younger siblings to school. So his two young sisters, they are going to school, and he was so happy and proud. And his father, I mean, it was amazing to see the expression in his father's eyes, that how proud he was that a son he was so worried about is doing so well. So these are the stories, and these are the kind of work that when is happening, that motivates us, that rekindles the hope. And this is of course one story. We are working with close to 100 million people around the world in any given year. So we are doing a lot. But again, as I said, that more needs to be done. And as a person, as an individual, as a Save the Children staff, I am very committed to do everything in my power to ensure that wherever there are child rights violation, we are there to act.
Okay, so let's move on to the last question of this whole podcast. What are a few words you would like to share to the general Nepali children? What are the things that we as children can look up to in the future about the various programs that possibly Save the Children is launching in Nepal? Could you please conclude with a few words to the Nepali children and an insightful idea about what can we be hopeful about the future, concerning Save the Children?
So one message in general, that no matter what, no matter how hard the going is, never ever give up on hope. Hope is the last thing that helps you overcome any problem in your life. Because when there is hope, you're thinking and you are able to find a solution to sometimes impossible problems. With regards to Save the Children, one thing that we are increasingly doing in Nepal is that we want to engage more and more children and youth in our programming. What we want to do is, rather than being a voice for them, we just want to be an enabler, and we want children and youth to be their own voice, because their voice is much more stronger than our voice. And that's why what we want to do is to create a platform, give them right resources so they can talk about their own issues and they can make their impact. So wherever our programs are, children are most welcome to join our programs, particularly various campaigning and advocacy initiatives, and be a force of their own. If they don't want us to be there, we will not be there. That's not who we are. We just want that children are able to address issues in a powerful way, that they're empowered and then they can change the world for them. So last thing I would say, that children need to realize their power. They have so much power. And when they come together and then they can raise an issue, that is going to be heard. So yes, I have very high hopes from Nepali children, and I know that I am right in my hopes.
Yes, we hope so. We hope we can combine all children and be a moving force toward the urging climate crisis. Thank you so much for your presence.
Thank you so very much.
It was great talking to you.
It was so lovely speaking to you.
Thank you.
All the very best.
Thank you.